April has come and gone, so it's time once again to recount what I've been up to the last 30 days. More than any other month in recent memory, I dabbled in a lot in April, so we have a lot to cover today. If you enjoyed the video and want to help me out a lot, leave a like and subscribe, it's greatly appreciated. With that out the way, let's get into what I've been up to during April 2022. Let's start with what I watched in April, beginning with anime. For once, I watched some anime, and not only one, but three. The first of which is Spy Family. I wanted to try this series back when it was just a manga, and seeing people hype up the anime's release made me check it out. And it's good. Far more lighthearted and wholesome than I was anticipating, but that's not a bad thing. It's about a spy, an assassin, and a telepath getting together to masquerade as a family to each further their own goals. And I've gotten attached to each of them right away from the jump. Unsurprisingly, you can tell they're going to eventually acknowledge each other as a real family, but this is one of those shows where it's more about the journey than the destination, so that's not an issue. I've been watching it weekly, something I haven't done with the anime in forever, which for me says a lot about how likable this cast is. The next anime I watched was My Dress Up Darling. It's a generic boy meets girl story with the theme of cosplay thrown on top, and that element was honestly the only thing that kept me watching. This isn't a bad show, it just isn't my type of premise anymore at 29 years old. The main girl Marin is fine, she's funny, charismatic, and actually pretty likable. The main character and her love interest Gojo on the other hand, I could not stand this guy and almost dropped the show a couple episodes in because of how unlikable he is. He's a textbook anime high school kid that freaks out if a girl so much as looks in his direction, has no confidence, and is very bland. He has his redeeming traits, like being a natural born seamster with an eye for detail, but not once could I get over how annoying he is to appreciate his good points. Marin quite literally falls out of the sky into his life, and the relationship as him being the one that brings her cosplay dreams to life ensues. I don't have much else to say about this one. It's a pretty average rom-com, and if you're ever in the mood for one, check it out. Just don't expect it to be the best thing you've ever seen. The last anime I saw was one I revisited from my childhood, and that's Transformers Armada. My introduction to Transformers was actually Beast Wars, and Armada was next, so it was my real first vehicle-based Transformers show. I was a massive fan and watched the show almost religiously, and this past month, I just got the random impulse to give it a new viewing now that I'm an adult. So I did just that. First thing I have to note though is that as a kid, I never thought of this show as an anime. In my mind, because it was Transformers, it was a cartoon. But straight away watching it as an adult, the typical and sometimes great actual anime animation style really popped out. Armada is of course about the eternal battle between the Autobots and Decepticons, but this time they're fighting over a third mini race of Transformers called the Minicons. Minicons can augment the power of bigger Transformers, and so everyone is out to get them either for their own gains or to save them. And as a kid, I adored the concept of the Minicons. Maybe they spoke to the big monster collector fan in me, but to a degree, I liked them over the main Transformers themselves and wanted to collect them all. The show itself is still enjoyable, though its overall plot and structure isn't much to write home about. Even still, it was a joy revisiting this piece of my childhood. That was it for the anime I watched, but I did watch one live action movie and one live action show last month. The show being the British crime drama Peaky Blinders. It follows an up and coming British crime family right after World War I. And while it doesn't really reinvent the wheel in any way, it's a great watch, helped immensely by a really likable cast. I binged the first 3 seasons in pretty short time, something I don't do nowadays unless the show really hooks me, so that should say a lot. I'm no stranger to either crime dramas or post-World War I settings, but it's usually done from an American's perspective, so it was nice to see what issues people at the time were dealing with in another part of the world. It's a really enjoyable and bingeable show, so if you ever need something to watch, I highly recommend it. The last thing I watched in April was the movie Dunkirk. I've been meaning to check this out for over a year now, and one day finally got in the mood to sit down and watch it. It's based on the real-life evacuation of Dunkirk during World War II, where thousands of Allied troops had to escape France with the Nazi German army on their heels. The main thing that stood out to me with this movie is how grounded it was. Like, it didn't go out of its way to make moments of conflict feel like a Michael Bay movie. For example, a German Stuka bomber bombed the beach where soldiers were waiting to be evacuated, and those that survived just went on waiting for boats to come like before, which is all they could do. The events of Dunkirk were a history-deciding moment, but the movie did an amazing job of showing how, for the soldiers involved in it, they were simply focused on trying to live through the day. It's an enjoyable piece of cinema and one I definitely recommend to anyone else that likes history. Now moving on to the games I played last month, of which there are a few. Let's talk first about Coralman. This is a Pokemon-inspired monster collector with a lot of love put into it to make it its own beast. You're still holding 6 monsters, catching wild ones, battling trainers, etc. But Coralman really sets itself apart with its setting and progression mechanics. Instead of a bright-eyed kid exploring the region for the heck of it or completing an encyclopedia, you're actually a researcher helping out an institute. And unlike Pokemon games, you can freely manipulate the IVs of your Coralman to build them to however you want them to be. On top of that, the game has a beautiful pixel art style in battles that I wish the mainline Pokemon games I continue with instead of going 3D. It's overall just a really solid monster collector that sadly came out at the end of a crazy month for game releases, so it didn't really get the buzz it should have. The next thing I played was the beta for Gundam Evolution. To be blunt, it's an Overwatch clone, and as much as it saddens me to say, not a great one either. It's not a bad game, but it has none of the polish that makes Overwatch as enjoyable as it is to play, even with a group of friends. This is really apparent when you're playing characters that fill the same role as someone in Overwatch, like the Pale Rider being almost the same as Soldier 76. It's like a night and day comparison. But even when not comparing it to Overwatch, it's just nothing to write home about. If you're a big Gundam fan, it can be cool controlling the mobile suits and seeing how they come to life in a hectic first-person shooter, but that's about it. I wanted to like this game, and who knows, maybe down the line they'll overhaul it enough to get me to want to give it another try. But as of now, you're not missing much here. The next game was one I tried on a whim after seeing a snippet of a review for it in passing, and that's Weird West. True to its name, it's a bit of a bizarre game set in the Wild West, and honestly I may struggle to describe it in perfect detail. The game starts out with your son being murdered by a local gang and you set out to get revenge. There's also a lot of supernatural stuff going on, like monsters living among humans, and the fact you may have already died and are reincarnated into a new life. It's interesting because it's almost easy to forget that the game isn't grounded in reality, and then a person turns into a monster randomly and kills someone. The gameplay almost reminded me of something like Fallout, where you pick up and collect random stuff from the world, some of which can be used to mess with enemies in combat. You're initially equipped with a gun, and you can get more weapons and powers as the game progresses. And battles are done in real time, though there's a bit of an emphasis on stealth to give yourself the advantage before fights break out, or if you want to avoid confrontation altogether. It's definitely one of the most unique games I played in a while, and although I didn't fall in love with it, I did enjoy the short time I spent giving it a try. Next up, I dove back into Super Robot Wars 30 because we got a pretty big new and final update for the game, adding even more series to the already jam-packed game and even a new true ending. It was nice going back to this game that's a giant love letter not only to its home series, but mecha as a whole genre. And the new ending, while not without its issues, was a great swan song for a great game by the time the credits rolled. After doing every bit of the new content, I can definitely say I'm finally done with the game now after putting 100 hours into it. It's possibly the most ambitious title the series has seen, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. The final game I played was Chrono Cross: The Radical Dreamers Edition. Now, I've played Chrono Cross before, but I've never gotten to beat it. But with this new release, I've gotten further than I ever have before, and this playthrough may be the most fun I've ever had with Chrono Cross. I do think its predecessor Chrono Trigger is better in pretty much every way, but I can appreciate Chrono Cross for what it's done on its own. The magic system was really confusing to me when I was younger, but now that I've gotten the hang of it, it's pretty fun. And while I wish most party members got more development and screen time, it is nice being able to choose from so many to have your ideal party. Also, Chrono Cross is the first old school RPG I played in quite a while, and it's been a reminder to me that I much prefer the JRPGs of that era to the ones of today. Just with the way they were made, their bonus content, their charm, is something you don't really see today outside of stuff like Dragon Quest and Yakuza Like a Dragon. It's been a nice breath of fresh air. As you can tell, I was quite busy with trying out things this past month. Unfortunately though, I still couldn't bring myself to dedicate much time to videos again. And maybe that's the reason why I was trying so many different things in April. I think I just wanted to find something to get my mind off things and hook me. I am doing better mentally than March, but that drive to be productive with content creation just hasn't been there for me, and I apologize for that. I have both this big move and my big 30th birthday coming up in July, which has been weighing on my mind, and a combination of other stress factors in life have been at the forefront of my mind. But I'm working through it as best I can. One thing I am proud of is using positive outlets for all my stress and worries. I've been working out almost daily and trying to tone down on scrolling social media, which I'm beginning to find less and less enjoyable as time goes on, honestly. I would like to say that hopefully May is the month where I'm back in full swing of things here on the channel, but I wouldn't want to make a promise I can't keep. Just know I'm hanging in there, and I hope all of you are as well.